Let's go back near our nation's capital to talk to Charlie Smith. Charles R. Smith, the webmeister, the man in charge of software.net, who is or is not going to try to get a seat at the inauguration. Charlie, I understand he's going to walk some of the boulevard trying to press the flesh of the masses, opening himself up, of course, for anyone with a 500-meter ability as a sniper.
It's going to be tough to do something like that, especially on Inauguration Day. I'm not talking about walking the parade lines. D.C. has very, very incredible, just absolutely outrageous security provisions.
I believe that. I'm primarily concerned with what happens after he's in for a week. There's going to be, as you know, countless opportunities to do something very ugly as he continues along in office. It just happens. And you can't
the leftists have already made their threats.
I'm not even worried so much about the leftists. I'm worried about the globalists.
Yeah, there's that category as well, and they're basically using the left at the moment to...
Like toilet paper, exactly.
Oh, yeah. Well, the leftists are usually dupes for the limo liberal, neocon, neo-libs who basically do the bidding of major corporations, banks, and others who like to make tons of money. You know, one of the great stories that just hit the wires about a week ago, George Soros, you're going to love this. Soros lost $1 billion.
Yeah, I ran it.
Yeah, and you know how he did it. He shorted the stocks after Trump won.
He bet wrong,
betting that the stock market would tank.
Very funny, and it took off. How funny! I know. I'm still laughing about that. One wonders how many billions he has. He'll make it up one way or the other.
I'm sure he'll make it up. He'll sell out somebody or overthrow a government or something like that and have some fun.
That's what they do.
Raping their country.
Yep.
But, the security issues do concern me about the president and the president-elect. The outgoing president is, he's going to be living a really tough life, having to lease a $4.3 million mansion to move into.
Tough.
So, yeah, that's just really rough. It's just going to be real hard.
He also owns a place in Hawaii. He owns a place. Didn't he buy something in North Carolina? Maybe not. Anyway, he's not finished. He has an ego that won't quit. United Nations Secretary General, we'll see. He's not going away.
Especially if we pull the bank check from the United Nations.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
They won't really want him there.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way, and this is my view of the narcissist that we currently have in office. Actually, when he bolts, he's going to write a book. He's going to do some interviews. He's going to play a lot of golf and watch TV.
He's going to be cool, Charlie. He's going to be low.
He's going to kick back.
That's right. He's going to be low-style cool.
He did not really want the second term. Michelle and the others are the ones that pushed him to it. He could have walked out on top of the world, Ma, 4 years ago.
He actually could have had a fake legacy to stand on. He got nothing now.
Geez. There's nothing left.
No.
Obamacare is going to be out the window, no matter how hard they scream. Internationally, it was really funny. I read one of the articles in our leading fake news tabloids like the New York Times or the Washington Post about how none of our allies are going to trust Trump. And I'm reading this going, but you don't realize none of our allies trust Obama, and they openly admit that.
Right.
The Israelis can't stand him. The Brits don't like him. The French never really had much have appreciation for him because he never showed up for any of their funerals that they had with the terrorist events.
The guy he's lived an anointed life. He's lived the good life his whole life. He's never had it really tough, except maybe when he was really little. He's not
in a bubble right now.
That's right. I don't consider him to be an African-American, the first African-American president. I don't consider him to be any particular ethnicity. He's just a punk who's had a free ride all the way through, and that's who he is.
Well, as you and I both agreed when he came to office 8 years ago, he's Bush Light.
There you go. I love that one. That's a great summation. Really
and the liberals hate that reference, and the neocons and the statist globalists hate that reference.
Well, actually, he's more Bush pink than he is Bush light, but whatever.
True.
His Marxism, or we could say...
it's still the same folks. Look at the Bush clan supported Hillary.
Same people. Exactly.
Okay. We had many of the Bush appointees jumping on the Hillary bandwagon. It's because they're statists. As you pointed out, there are actually three major branches of our political spectrum. There's the left and the right, which we are oh so familiar with, who constantly fight each other, little knowing that the third part, the statists, the bureaucrats, the globalists, the limo liberals, and the rich neocons.
Hey, we could almost throw the mainstream media in there as an adjunct.
Oh, the mainstream media is a lapdog to the neocons and the neolibs, okay?
Right.
Literally, they are as much globalist elitist as anyone else. And, you know, they all consider themselves to be so wonderfully intellectual. They're the smartest people in the room. And look at what a great job they've done to our country in the past 20 years or so.
Well, they've done it to our country, not for our country, that's for sure. Now, speaking of mainstream media, here's a headline. Now, this is the depth of intellect and international geopolitical analysis that we're getting on MSNBC. Rachel Maddow, right? Here's the headline now. Now, as all of you know, because you've been listening, Obama has been in cahoots with NATO and the other globalists, putting tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands. We don't know how many troops are in the east on the border with Russia. We don't know how many tanks. We've got apparently 3,600 minimum tanks and armored vehicles there. Tanks, though, that many. All right, here's Maddow. Question. Will Trump pull troops recently deployed near Russia's border because Putin has something on him? This is the mainstream media. This is what we are looking to become enlightened and knowledgeable. Rachel Maddow on Tuesday reminded her audience that President Barack Obama ramped up U.S. troop presence near the Russian border just days before he's set to leave office, leading the MSNBC host to wonder, is the new president going to take those troops out? This woman has an IQ at least of 88, 89. Pushing maybe 90. This is embarrassing. It gives me
great pleasure to witness these kinds of headlines, because it gives me an appreciation of the National Enquirer when they run something like Three-Headed Alien Baby.
Yeah.
Love child of what is it, Michael Jackson, is ruling Earth. NBC, CBS, ABC have all been waning as far as influences.
Yes, they are.
Their online, their capability of actually broadcasting and their audience is literally dwindling, as you and I both know. And one of the biggest reasons is because of the net and folks like you who are out there taking it on. Taking it right to them. And then we have, other things such as the Twitter feed. The president is actually using a tool of the elite leftists against
It's very
the elite
interesting.
leftists.
It's very clever.
And they can't stand it.
They don't know what to do.
Because he doesn't have to go to the New York Times to leak something. All he has to do is make a post on Twitter.
And his jammies at 2 in the morning. Look, he's literally forcing the media to carry his material. He's trumped the media with his Twitter account. They have to cover it. They have to report on it. He's rolled over them. It's fascinating to watch. Everything's been reversed.
And then, of course, his proposal with the White House press corps. I just love that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
They are the elite of the elite, the upper crusties. You know, people would jostle just to get a luncheon date with one of those guys.
It's all true.
And, you know, they have this very limited seating in this tiny room where they get their briefing from the president, and they're trying to dictate terms to him as to, oh, well, this is how many people will need to show up, and we don't want to move them out of the room, and, you know, you can't throw any of these guys out, or you can't invite any new people in.
No, it's a traditional 75 or however many there are. That's it. That's the club. Yeah. And Trump wants to open it up to 400 and some. He wants to have hundreds in there.
And there is absolutely no reason why not to.
Of course not.
Because there are other agencies and entities with a complete spectrum from left to right all the way around the globe who would love to get in there and be able to ask a question while he snubs CNN.
Well, this is Steve Bannon is playing a role in this, I'm sure. At least I'm guessing, I'm sure.
Right. But, and, you know, I'll have to send a shout out to my friends in the Twitter competitor, Gab, where you can actually speak freely without actually having to worry about some poor little snowflake getting his feelings hurt and reporting you and getting your account zapped just because some liberal didn't like what reference you made or what joke you made. And, you know, Andrew, the guy who is running Gab, is doing a great job of literally tearing a brand new one into Twitter.
Oh, good. Competition. Remember that word? Competition.
What's that?
Competition. That's the word.
Oh, yeah. It's very interesting to see how, you know, things are shaping up. I mean, you know, we've got Mark Zuckerberg who's acting like Citizen Kane.
Isn't that
I'm
funny?
going to go ahead and set up my own news and tell everybody what's real and what isn't. And if you don't like it, well, then, you know, you're not invited on Facebook because we'll ban you. Well, you know, I'm not on Facebook, and there's a reason why I'm not on Facebook. I have a soul.
Hey, nicely said. Nicely said. Let me I want to jump over here. I ended the last hour with this. I'm very concerned with some of Trump's nominees. This guy, Zink, the Interior Secretary-to-be, has a position on global warming that is the antithesis of Trump's, at least as far as we know. It's antithetical. They're already kind of crossing horns over this thing. I don't know that augurs well for him. We will see if Trump is a man who will make changes. I think he will. He certainly did during the campaign.
You know, along those lines, I'll give you a real good example. The guys at NASA already know for a fact that the massive program of billions of dollars, which had been spun away from our manned space flight and our deep space flight programs, were, you know, planetary explorations, and that had been dedicated to global warming and Earth observation stuff, which was an overkill, that is getting pulled. It is being realigned back into manned space flight.
Right.
Which is one of the reasons why we have NASA to begin with. Now, you know, if you want to talk about the weather, let's let it go over to NOAA, and we'll let real scientists don't mess with the statistics, boys, and we'll see what comes out. And we have plenty of satellites already in place which do plenty of things to do the, sensors on temperature and warming and water levels and things like that. That's already there. It was basically a pig trough, a payoff to a bunch of scientists and contractors who push this agenda. And that's going bye-bye. The money is being realigned towards manned spaceflight, deep planetary exploration, Mars, and it's also being realigned, I love this part, back to what the original aeronautics part of NASA, towards manned flight and commercial flight, improving our commercial airlines, improving the capability of our airliners and efficiency, as well as maintenance, and they have come up with a whole range of ideas of things that we need to be dealing with just to stay up with the rest of the world. Now, this is the kind of things that makes jobs, that enhances our basic science and knowledge of not only the Earth but the universe, and it is also partially imperative for our economy and our national security. Right now, I don't care how many times you hear the Democrat left screeching about Russia. The bottom line is the Obama administration has approved that we continue to buy rocket engines from Russia to put our own military satellites into space.
We don't seem to be able to make rocket engines anymore. The Russians do.
Right.
They got damn good ones too, by the way.
I'm afraid so.
Yeah.
And this is a problem. Companies like Aerojet and now Bezos with Amazon and his Blue Horizon outfit, they're bringing forward some pretty heavy class, some very nice class rocket engines that we need to invest in. They're going to be American jobs, and they're going to put in American satellites into space without having to rely on any foreign power to just deliver those engines based on whatever happens to be today's priority. When you have a national security issue like reconnaissance satellites, signals intelligence, communications, GPS, and you're completely dependent on a foreign power to put that stuff into space, you have problems. The same thing goes with our manned spaceflight program. Everybody loves to look at pictures of the shuttle, but guess who canceled the program and canceled the follow-on that was going to be the manned-spaced Orion program? Obama.
Yep.
So, as far as I'm concerned, his legacy is disaster and waste.
And death.
Oh, yeah, we got plenty of that. Red lines in the sand.
Yeah.
Oh, the disaster that's Syria.
He's a hideous man. The whole Syrian disaster.
And Libya.
All of it. Libya, Syria.
You and I are just still livid over Libya.
Yep.
And we're going to hear more about this. I'm predicting that somebody out there, like the Russians, got Hillary's stuff, and they're holding on to it for a reason. And it's because it points directly at our financing and training what became ISIS. And it came out of Libya. And it was done with the CIA, which would not shock or surprise anyone. And this is, again, one of the classic neocon, neo-libs operations, just like Osama bin Laden, okay? We trained him, we gave him stingers, we showed him how to do that stuff, and he turned into a terrorist, blowback. Well, guess what? We supplied the arms, we trained ISIS, and that's the kind of stuff that's going to be coming out over the next year or so.
Exactly correct. There's some other things that bother me. In a word, Tillerson. I want to get into this, and we'll take our break here, but as you well know, Tillerson seems to be saying things. I don't know. Trump, from what I can gather, is earmarking China to be the bully of the next 4 years. It's not going to be Russia, but he's making constant noises about Beijing. He met the Taiwan president. We know that didn't sit very well with China. Now, what Tillerson is doing, though, is worse. I don't understand, Charlie, why he's doing it, but he's doing it. During his confirmation hearing, he made it quite clear that his position, and we're to assume, I guess, that Donald Trump's position, is that Beijing would no longer be able to build any artificial islands in the international waters of the South China Sea, and also that the Chinese would not be able to go to visit, to access their own artificial islands in the South China Sea. Now, how the hell does he think that that's going to stand up in the world court, or militarily, or any other way that makes sense? I don't get it. Here's the quote. This is a direct quote. "We're going to have to send China a clear signal that first, the island building stops, and second, your access to those islands is also not going to be allowed." Is that a declaration of war, Charlie, or am I misreading it?
No, actually it's not.
What is it? Tell me what it is. If they try to block the Chinese from going to those islands, what do you think the Chinese are going to do? You know the Chinese as well as anybody.
If they try to force their way through, it's going to be a disaster for them. One thing that you got to keep in mind,
but they've got submarines sitting 50 miles off the west coast with intermediate and ICBMs.
Their submarines, just trust me on this. Their submarines are just like they're the equivalent of a '67 Chevy with 10 cans and a string tied behind it at a wedding. Okay.
I thought that they had somehow come up with the prop that was virtually silent. They got hold of our design, the big propeller that pushes them.
They have our designs, but their problem has always been in the production side of that kind of technology.
All right, hold on.
We've seen it.
Yeah, hold on. We've got to take a break. We'll come back. I want to continue with this because they have in there what is the fighter that the J-20? What's the new hot fighter? Okay, that's supposed to be a good one. I don't know. F-22, J-20. Hold on. We'll be right back. Charlie and I will continue our analysis for you right after this. Okay, back with all of you, and Charlie and I continue. More on Tillerson, and we're going to watch this really closely because these are certainly words that the Chinese don't like at all. Just a second here. Now, they've built these islands. You've all seen the pictures of them, and they are rather fascinating. Pretty nifty trick, Charlie, all things considered. They're cementing over coral, basically, and dredging up fill material. There are sheltered harbors on the inside. There's like a big open reef in a way. They also have 9,000-foot runways on there for bombers. They're actually naval air stations is what they are in the South China Sea. Very interesting. I've never seen anything like it. It's a unique thing. And here's the deal. James Fennell, who recently retired as Director of Intel and Information Operations for the U.S. Pacific Fleet, said he expects a further buildup of military assets on the features, meaning the islands, including forward deployment of both fighter and bomber aircraft to at least one of the three new naval air, he called it naval air stations too, to be shortly followed by port calls to these deep water harbors by Chinese and naval combatants and even submarines. So they're using these as very strategic items on the big board.
Okay, now here's the skinny on this. They're built in international waters and on disputed territories.
Right.
okay?
Right.
Which means that they could conceivably construct one of these right offshore of, say, California, as long as it's outside in international waters. Now, I'm sure we wouldn't go for that. Basically, they're violating about 17 UN treaties that they signed on to when they did this. They claim that entire the South China Sea and all the airspace and all the sea space there is their territorial waters, which of course is not only outrageous but stupidly outrageous. You got to remember, 1/3 of all the Pacific traffic goes through that area. So the sum and total is this administration has basically stepped back and watched them do it and not done a damn thing. Now, we have a number of alternatives, both militarily as well as economically.
Right.
Don't assume for a second that the Chinese government is so stable that if we decided to put an embargo on some of their goods, that it wouldn't cause riots and conniption fits inside their cities. They do not have a stable system. The reason why I point that out is quite clear.
So this sounds like you're saying
nuclear weapons,
tariffs potentially too as another tool.
Nuclear weapons are done by the political bureau troops,
right,
under control of the Communist Party, not the PLA. So my point being is that's kind of like special elite forces of Republican or Democrats, depending on who's elected, controlling literally the nuclear weapons. So we know where they are all the time because they keep them locked up in the pen. There's a reason why they do that. If they actually deployed these like we do and put them on their missiles and their bombers, then one of their generals might get the idea that he could stage an election. So don't think for a second that the Communist Party trusts the military and vice versa. There is an extraordinary amount of competition and cutthroat action going on right now, politically speaking, inside China, and part of it is because of what Trump has done. That destabilization is something that we're going to have to deal with. Now, as far as their military systems are concerned, the Jin-class submarines, which is the lead class, their one aircraft carrier, the J-20, which will actually enter operational service in 2018.
It's supposed to be better than the F-35.
At best.
It's supposed to be better than the F-35, which still has 276 defects.
The J-20 is not even a stealth fighter, and there's a reason why it's not.
Right.
The engines in it are not capable of doing air combat and air combat maneuvers. They are not vectoring. They're Chinese made. The engines that they're using are Russian made at the moment because the Chinese can't even manufacture the grade necessary to put the thing in the air.
Right. I'm aware of that. Yes.
Now, here's the other part about the J-20. If it was so reliable, then the recent spotting of the J-17, which is one of their knockoffs of the Russian Su-27 series flanker, with a gigantic air-to-air missile under each wing, is indicative that they don't think the J-20 is going to work out for them. And the reason for that is the J-20 is designed to try to get into our rear. It is a long-range, very poor maneuverable interceptor. And this is classic Chinese design, mind you. It is not a fighter in the classical sense. The idea is they want to get it in behind our fighter groups to attack the tankers and the radar planes. Well, the problem is...
Nothing can be moved without observation by AWACS and satellites. We know everything in the air that they have. So how's somebody going to sneak around behind us?
The infrared profile on the J-20 is outrageous.
Is it? All right.
It is... They claim that it's stealthy, but you got to remember, if you look real carefully, they have canards In essence, the elevator for going up and down control is on the front, not on the rear.
Right, there's little mini wings on both sides of the cockpit, right in front of it.
Right. You might as well go ahead and paint a bullseye on it when you do that. You get great maneuverability, and in their case, the only reason they did it is they're trying to get some maneuverability. Remember, this is this jet, it weighs more than the F-22, yet its engines are only about half as powerful.
Ah, it's a beast with no legs.
Well, it's got a big fuel tank in it. The idea is for it to fly a long ways and try to stealthily penetrate. It's an interceptor. It's not a fighter plane.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's going to happen.
And therein lies its biggest weakness. And you got to remember, here's the other problem that the Chinese have. We know where all the runways are.
That's right.
Okay.
Put a few holes in them, and they don't have a place to land.
Right. They don't even have a place to take off. Now, the flip side of that is their problem is they have a lot of trouble tracking our aircraft carriers. Those are big suckers, but they have a lot of trouble tracking them.
Interesting.
Now, the one thing I will knock this administration on is the way that they have treated our military is sad, absolutely particularly sad state. The only saving grace right at the moment is our LA class and Seawolf class submarine, pack submarines. We could literally cut off those islands, and none of their submarines, their attack submarines, both conventional and nuclear, would even be able to venture far from port without finding themselves at the bottom of the sea with a very large hole in them. And that includes also anything else. Now, if you can't ship anything in, the only other alternative is to try to fly it in. Well, you know, the real teeth, frankly, of the Chinese military is in the DF-21, the DF-31, the DF-26 ballistic missiles that have guided warheads and hypersonic vehicles, which is the reason why we have Aegis with the SM-3s. So that's their real teeth. That's the thing that we have to worry about. And again, that's classic third world. It's really easy for a leadership to control a missile force versus trying to build a viable military with aircraft, warships, armored vehicles, troops.
Do you see eventually some kind of a conflict between the U.S. and China in the South China Sea, somewhere, Taiwan? What do you see?
What I see is their nightmare coming true. We're going to look at the Japanese and at the South Koreans and say, well, gee, since Beijing can't seem to put a noose on North Korea, you guys can go ahead and develop your own nuclear weapons alongside ours.
Don't the Chinese know that we already gave the Japanese nukes, so we've got them stationed there?
That's true, but on the other hand, the thing that they fear the most is the Japanese now openly deploying not only ours, but their own.
Right.
And you know that they have the technology, and so do the South Koreans, to deploy large numbers of very accurate and extremely deadly systems.
Fukushima was involved in the secret Japan-Israeli-U.S. nuclear weapons program over there, just so we keep that on the table, too.
Yeah, well, you know, the North Koreans are involved with the Iranians and used to be with the Syrians.
That's another important point. All right, let me go back to what you said about North Korea long ago, and it was basically Beijing's storefront. They don't do anything without Beijing's approval or instructions. Is that still the case with Xi in there, or have things changed?
Yeah, it's pretty much still the case. They like to use him as the cut up. Basically, you know, it's very convenient for him to take the heat. He's done some things that's pissed him off. And that does kind of tread on them because
talking
it
about
costs
Kim right
them
now, yeah.
money.
Mm-hmm.
This is along their border with North Korea.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, about a year ago.
A lot of the industries and areas, the joint ventures that they tried to do, some of that stuff didn't work out.
All right, so let me wrap this. I'm going to go back to the South China Sea. This is obviously a situation that can be inflamed at any time Donald Trump wants to, through Tillerson, through the Pentagon, anybody in position there, Joint Chiefs, they can make noise, and I don't know how the Chinese are going to react. Will they ever get to a point where they're ready to say, okay, here's the line, cross it, and we're gonna duel over this?
China doesn't do it that way.
It's
China
the long walk.
Yeah, they look at a 25-year plan, and they laugh at us because we go 2 years at best. The place to hit China, and Trump is extremely well aware of this, the place to hit China, you don't hit them with aircraft carriers. You don't roll out, some sort of gigantic military task force and bombers up to their borders. That's just going to be playing into their hands.
I would think.
You know where you hit them? You call over to Benton, Arkansas, and you tell Walmart.
The household goods department at Walmart.
On any Chinese goods coming in now.
Well, you might not have heard me. I said tariff about 10 minutes ago. There's another big tool. Yeah, you cut them out of the household goods department at Walmart International, and ouch.
As I mentioned before, do not underestimate the fact that the Chinese people right now already have a lot of trouble with their leadership, and their leadership does not feel comfortable if, for some reason, major sectors of their economy get doused because they're no longer exporting to the West. That is going to cause major unrest inside their country, and they know it, and they're very vulnerable, which basically tells me, if you even breathe in that direction, they're going to kind of go, oh, okay, maybe we need to talk about this. The Chinese need to be put in a box. Their hacking has been outrageous. They're literally attacking the United States on a continuous basis, economically as well as militarily. Okay? That is a fact. And I'm not going to say we need to hack them back. You don't do that tit for tat. Instead,
if they're getting in here so easily, doesn't that raise another issue? How vulnerable, if they're getting into our systems so easily, which they apparently have, doesn't that raise the issue of vulnerability? How vulnerable are we?
Oh, well, you've heard me speak of that before.
Yes, and I brought that up because you are the man who talks all the time about cybersecurity.
Which is why I worry about Donald's selection of Giuliani to run their cyber core.
Okay, so what is Giuliani's formal position?
The website for his own security company is like 20 years out of date. It's already been hacked.
Well,
so,
the Chinese got into our grid also, remember, 3-4 years ago? So they've been there, they've done that.
You see, the problem with that is that they have their own vulnerabilities as well. And again, we can play this game a lot better than they can if they want to go that route. If I was looking at the president, I'd say, okay, we need to beef up our defenses, but don't cyber attack these guys. Forget that. You want to really hit them where it hurts. Like I said, call up Benton, Arkansas. You look at the automakers. Let's pull out those factories. Forget about selling.
Oh, how many GM factories did they build? The GM build over there. They built Buick. They built. I know they built a Buick. I'm not sure if they built an Oldsmobile factory or not. I don't even know if they make Oldsmobiles
Chrysler was
anymore.
big in there.
Well, Chrysler's been bought by Fiat.
Else, they got took.
Yeah.
The Chinese don't play the same game that everyone else does. Look at the the Russians sell to them only because they need the money, not because they want to. And one of the reasons why I say that is if you look at the frontline Chinese fighter right now, the J-17s and the J-11s, they're illegal copies of the Soviet Russian Su-27 flanker, which they're not paying the Russians for. The only reason that the Russians are tolerating it at the moment is because they're at least getting a piece of the action, because the Chinese can't seem to manufacture a decent jet engine. Now, you know, when you look at companies like Boeing trying to move their 777 production over to China, you have to ask yourself a question. The question is, who are you working for? Are you working for the country that you're based in? Are you trying to return investment to your investors? Or are you just trying to line your pocket for today? And the answer is C. They're just trying to line their pocket for today. They don't care about their investors.
Is that part of the reason that Trump went after Boeing?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And you know, a lot of that stuff is starting to get pulled. And you've seen it. Now, the thing that we can do with the Chinese is real simple. We can crack down on the technology exports and theft really bad, which will eliminate a lot of their knockoffs and their capability of copying stuff. They'll get desperate. We can also cut out a lot of the imports of their cheap crap. Okay, so, you know, this is how I put it. You know, you're going to go to war with me because I don't want to buy your cheap plastic crap? Not going to happen. On the other hand, when a bunch of their factories get put under, look at what happened with Apple. They have already looked at Foxconn, which is the Taiwan-based company that engages Chinese slave labor to build the iPhone, and said, we want you to build a factory in the U.S. and start shutting down in China. Now, that actually has a purpose to it. One, it employs more Americans. Two, we're buying stuff built here. And three, the Chinese are cut completely out of the picture, both technology and money. That's what bothers them the most. And we can do this with a lot of other countries. This is the difference with this administration. Don't be fooled by the PR stuff that you had to go through sitting in front of your left-wing senators who are looking for a gotcha question with a headline for the New York Times. They just didn't give it to them. Okay? Look behind the scenes, what their budget is, what they're going to be prioritizing. I mean, the word already on the street, I love this. Donald is talking about a 10% reduction in the federal workforce. There are already bureaucrats up in D.C. that are scared beyond belief that they're not going to be employed sitting around behind a desk doing nothing. Isn't that just wonderful? Yeah. We won't be paying people to do nothing anymore or to sit there and watch porn all day. Look at one of the reasons why the left, and in particular the mainstream, took after Trump with their Black Caucus, because they're seeing the numbers in the African American community starting to erode. And that's because the people living in these downtown ghetto hellholes are beginning to get tired of the limo liberals that have been running their life for the past 40 years. You know, when you don't have jobs, when there aren't any black-owned businesses or black-owned real estate, and all you see are these high muckety-mucks, whatever color, running around, siphoning off money for them and their cronies, you get tired of it after a while, especially if you're living in a free fire zone like Chicago.
Yeah, that's a very good label for it, too. It's exactly
and
what
I'm not the only one saying this. I'm only echoing what an ex-Black Panther just said on television not more than a day ago.
What did he say? I missed it.
Exactly what I said.
That's cute.
Which is, these guys have done nothing but destroy the African American community, and they should be ashamed of themselves. They need to be literally gotten rid of.
You got to have morality to feel shame.
Sold out.
Yeah, no morality, no shame. Doesn't work. They don't have it.
So we're seeing a major political realignment. One thing I'm loving, you know me, I love the F-35, but I'm also loving Trump strong-arming Lockheed, saying, you got to bring the price down on this, otherwise we're not going to buy it.
Don't forget, you got to fix it and bring the price down.
That's
276 defects, and it's just not combat ready. There was a story yesterday. That's a lot of defects for $1.5 trillion, Charlie. Most expensive airplane ever built.
Yeah, and when you look at them and you go, okay, for the same price I could buy 3 or maybe 4 stealth version of the F-15 Eagle.
Exactly. Oh, exactly.
Why would I want to buy that?
How about the 16?
Shakes up Lockheed.
Well, that's why Trump mentioned the F-16 Super Hornet. He wanted Boeing to line out. What are they going to cost me?
There's the Stealth Eagle, and then there's the Stealth Hornet. They've already offered revisions, and I've seen the designs. They are excellent. They're not that difficult to re-energize the production lines, and they are tremendously capable. And believe me, we should have kept on producing the F-22, to be honest with you. Although
why wouldn't
the F-35 has got things going for it right now, we're going to have to put the money behind it to get it to go. At the same time, we need to get Lockheed off its butt to fix it and bring the price down to the point where we can sell it globally.
Well, good luck on that. We'll find out. We'll find out a lot of things pretty soon. Thanks, Charlie. As always, great analysis. Take care.
Thank you.
You bet. Charles R. Smith, softwar.net, and we shall continue with more right after this. What is it? Tell me what it is. If they try to block the Chinese from going to those islands, what do you think the Chinese are going to do? You know the Chinese as well as anybody.
If they try to force their way through, it's going to be a disaster for them. One thing that you got to keep in mind,
but they've got submarines sitting 50 miles off the west coast with intermediate and ICBMs.
Their submarines, just trust me on this. Their submarines are just like they're the equivalent of a '67 Chevy with 10 cans and a string tied behind it at a wedding. Okay.
I thought that they had somehow come up with the prop that was virtually silent. They got hold of our design, the big propeller that pushes them.
They have our designs, but their problem has always been in the production side of that kind of technology.
All right, hold on.
We've seen it.
Yeah, hold on. We've got to take a break. We'll come back. I want to continue with this because they have in there what is the fighter that the J-20? What's the new hot fighter? Okay, that's supposed to be a good one. I don't know. F-22, J-20. Hold on, we'll be right back. Charlie and I will continue our analysis for you right after this. Okay, back with all of you, and Charlie and I continue. More on Tillerson, and we're going to watch this really closely because these are certainly words that the Chinese don't like at all. Just a second here. Now, they've built these islands. You've all seen the pictures of them, and they are rather fascinating. Pretty nifty trick, Charlie, all things considered. They're cementing over coral, basically, and dredging up fill material. There are sheltered harbors on the inside. They're like a big open reef in a way. They also have 9,000-foot runways on there for bombers. They're actually naval air stations is what they are in the South China Sea. Very interesting. I've never seen anything like it. It's a unique thing. And here's the deal. James Fennell, who recently retired as Director of Intel and Information Operations for the U.S. Pacific Fleet, said he expects a further buildup of military assets on the features, meaning the islands, including forward deployment of both fighter and bomber aircraft to at least one of the 3 new naval air, he called it naval air stations too, to be shortly followed by port calls to these deep water harbors by Chinese and naval combatants and even submarines. So they're using these as very strategic items on the big board.
Okay, now here's the skinny on this. They're built in international waters and